ant ya Rasulullah? He said, even you? And he sallallahu alayhi wasallam responded saying, he said, even me. We act like we are deserving. We act like everything that we've received in our lives is because we worked for it. The only reason that we are here today, the only reason that we've reached where we are in our lives is only from the blessing of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We can never forget that. And if He wills, He can take all of this away in a moment's notice. And there's nothing we can do about it. Literally nothing. Everything is His infinite control. Everything is under His infinite will. This is not something that we can play with or do in our own hands. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala also makes another promise. He says to us, وَلُنَبْلُوَنَّكُمْ بِشَيْءٍ مِّنَ الْخَوْفِ وَالْجُوعِ وَنَقْصٍ مِّنَ الْأَمْوَالِ وَالْأَنفُسِ وَالثَّمَرَاتِ وَبَشِّرِ الصَّابِرِينَ. That we shall certainly test you with fear and hunger, loss of property, lives, and crops. But give good news to those who are sabr. Give good news to those who have forbearance and who have patience. What do all these things have in common? If we look at them, fear, hunger, property, lives, crops. What do all these things have in common?
Loss.
All of them have loss. In what sense?
Something meaningful.
Something that has value to me, right? As a human, as a man. That all of these different things, they have some type of worldly value. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is very clearly saying here that I will test you with those worldly values that you love. And I will test you with them by removing them from you. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He balances all of our lives with qabd wal bast. Meaning that there are times where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will give us, and there are times where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will take away. It's upon us as Muslims to be patient when He takes away, and to be what when He gives? I'm sorry? To be grateful, to be thankful, absolutely. And another thing that we need to remember, and this is sometimes very easy to forget, and this doesn't happen all the time, but it does happen, that good things happen to bad people, and then sometimes bad things happen to good people. This is not necessary just because I'm fasting, because I'm praying, because I'm giving zakat and I've made hajj, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala won't test me. It doesn't mean that He won't make me fall ill. It doesn't mean that He'll make me lose my job. It doesn't mean that He will cause a death in the family of maybe somebody who is very close to me, my son or my daughter. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala protect us and our families. But just because we're doing what He asked, it doesn't mean that I'm going to get what I want. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will always and forever do what He wills. And sometimes that's difficult to forget. And sometimes we ask this, how can this happen to that person? He's such a good person. Well, look at this other, look at these people, they're so evil, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, apparently it looks like there's good that's happening to them. And sometimes we try to justify these things by saying, and I don't always agree with this justification. Well, those people, they don't have fulfillment. They're not truly happy. Maybe on a spiritual level, yes, I definitely do agree. But at the same time, if one of them comes to you and they say, yeah, actually, you know what, I'm fine. I feel good and I'm happy. Is that a sign that he's right? Is that a sign that, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is pleased with him? No. The reality is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will deal with everyone how He wills to deal with them in His infinite wisdom. He holds us responsible for who? Who am I responsible for? Myself. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala makes this very clear. He says, "Qu anfusakum wa ahlikum nar." He said, save yourself and your family from the hellfire. This is very clearly defined. MashaAllah, there are some of us, we still feel like we can save other people, and we'll tell them, you prayed wrong, and your pants are too long, and your beard's too short, and we have some people like that. They've expanded their circle a little bit. May Allah bless them. But at the end of the day, this is who I am responsible. Allah made me responsible for me. How I carry out and how I fulfill my responsibility is something that's very important. And there's an ayah that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala uses to express this, saying, أَمْ حَسِبْتُمْ أَن تَدْخُلُوا الْجَنَّةَ وَلَمَّا يَأْتِكُمْ مَثَلَ الَّذِينَ خَلَوْا مِنْ قَبْلِكُمْ مَسَّتْهُمُ الْبَأْسَاءُ وَالضَّرَّاءُ وَزُلْزِلُوا حَتَّى يَقُولَ الرَّسُولُ وَالَّذِينَ آمَنُوا مَعَهُ مَتَى نَصْرُ اللَّهِ أَلَا إِنَّ نَصْرَ اللَّهِ قَرِيبٌ. And this is a completion of the verse that we started our discussion with. Let me read it in its entirety. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, "Do you suppose that you will enter the garden without first having suffered like those before you?" It's very important. If you want to enter the garden, what's going to happen? You will be tested. Don't think you won't. You will. A very famous hadith where Jibreel alayhi salatu wasalam, after the creation of heaven and hell, he looked toward the heaven and he asked Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he said, who would not want to enter this place? And when he looked at hell, he said, who would not want to stay away from this place? Then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala surrounded the paradise with difficulties and trials, and he surrounded the hellfire with ease. And Jibreel alayhi salam, he asked two more questions. When he looked toward the hellfire, he said, well, who will be able to avoid this temptation, this ease? And he looked toward paradise and he said, who is going to be able to overcome these fitan and these difficulties in order to enter this paradise? And I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to make us and our families from those who enter His paradise. But there are a couple notes here that I did want to point out. The first of them, that if we want to enter paradise, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will for sure, don't think that there's any exception here. The Prophet ﷺ, how easy was his life? He's just like trial after trial after trial after difficulty after difficulty. Were there moments of ease? Were there moments of happiness? Absolutely. But in general, his overall life, it was one that was filled with trial and difficulty and tribulation, up to the point of his death. And how did he sallallahu alaihi wasallam die? He was poisoned. And he was telling Aisha, he said, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is testing me in a way that he is double that of a normal person. So if our internal temperature, what is a fever? Like 105, right? Just imagine that was at 210. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is testing him double of what he tested us. And obviously, he is Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. His maqam and his station is higher than any other human being, any other creation. Sallallahu alaihi wasallam. It is based on this difficulty. It is based on that, and this is always subjective. This is always going to be subjective when it comes to the rest of us. Two people might be tested in the same way, with the same thing. But for one person, it might be what? I'm sorry? Very difficult, extremely difficult. And for some people, it might be very easy. I remember growing up, I wasn't particularly religious when I was young. Some of my friends, they used to drink, they used to smoke. I was never interested in that. Just naturally. I had an aversion. The smell really bothered me. But I had other friends who were religious, or at least wanted to be, and they were more inclined to that. Unfortunately, one of my friends, he actually relapsed and he fell into drug abuse. Same test, same exposure. But for him, it was a real fitna. It was a real problem. And for me, like I said, just the smell. It really bothered me, and I wasn't interested. Naturally. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tests different people in different ways, in different levels. So what I might view to be easy might be extremely difficult for my brother or my sister. We need to keep these things in perspective. We have to put these things in context. The other thing here that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions that is interesting to know, He says, وَلَمَّا يَأْتِكُمْ مَثَلَ الَّذِينَ خَلُوا مِنْ قَبْلِكُمْ. And that there were individuals before you who were tested, who were suffered. Why mention this to us? Why is this an important note? Why would Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala add this part? Why wouldn't He just say that we're going to test you? Or do you think you're going to enter the paradise without being tested? And stop. Period. End of ayah. But He added this point. And there's a reason. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala doesn't speak without reason, and He doesn't add phrases without reason.
We are not alone, Allah is testing. He tested.
Allah Akbar. Number one, we're not alone. We're not alone, absolutely. That's an excellent point. And what else?
Give us a hope also, like
How?
you were testing, but give us the person also who's been tested, but he overcome.
Allah Akbar. Allah.
He overcome.
Allah. That number one, like the brother said, that we're not alone. Okay? I'm not the only one being tested. And sometimes it feels like that, right? Like you look around and like, man, everybody's so good. Like everything, why is everything so difficult for me? And the other thing is, well, I mean, if people before did it, then why can't I? If the people before me were tested, why can't I be tested? And I know some people, they like saying, okay, well, during the time of the companions, things were better, but were they? Were they really? They had substance abuse problems. Lying, backbiting, zina. All of these were problems in the community, within the Muslim community. Do we not suffer from those same problems today? In addition to what? In addition to being at war. Something that we forget. In addition, all of these societal problems, in addition to being at war. So, well, they had pure hearts and they had all these. Yeah, I agree. But it doesn't mean that they didn't have problems. There's a very famous story, and this is a historical account, that there were two young people. There was a young man and a young woman, and they used to come late to Salah on purpose. They used to come late to Salah on purpose. And this has to do with how the rows are formed in the masjid. So the men, how do we form rows? Like if we have an open space like this, and there are men and women who are praying in the same space, how are the rows ideally to be formed? I'm sorry?
On the front.
So the men, we start from the middle, we move outward, and then we move? We move back, right? You start first, second, third, fourth. Like the women, how do the women form rows if you have an open space like this? They start from the last row. And they move forward. Like, so if I'm a young man and there's this young woman who I like, and she likes me, where's the best place for us to pray? Right? I'm going to come late for Salah. Why? Because I am going to get the last row, and she's going to get the first. And we're going to be nearest to each other. And they used to do this so they can see each other during Salah. So do not think, and the reason I'm mentioning this is not obviously not to expose them or lessen their maqam, radiallahu anhu. But the reason I'm sharing this is to show that they had societal problems too. They had issues too. And we face very similar issues. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave them success and He gave them victory because they remembered Him. And I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to give us success and victory when we remember Him. And sometimes we also need to remember that the ultimate justice is from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So He says, وَلَا تَحْسَبَنَّ اللَّهَ غَافِلًا أَمَّا يَعْمَلُ الظَّالِمُونَ إِنَّمَا يُؤَخِّرُهُمْ لِيَوْمٍ تَشْخَصُ فِيهِ الْأَبْصَارُ. That do not think that Allah is unaware of what the disbelievers or what the oppressors do. He only gives them respite until the day when their eyes will stare in horror. In this ayah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He's basically telling us that this world is not a world of justice. And a very simple example, even within an Islamic paradigm, if you have someone who's murdered a family, cold-blooded, he's killed 2 or 3 people. What is his punishment? What is his punishment? Was everybody scared? I don't know what happened. The death penalty. Right, the death penalty. Right, the death penalty is supposed to be applied on this individual. How many times can I apply the death penalty on this person? Only once. And the same death penalty would be applied even if it only killed 1 person.